Thanks so much, everyone, for coming back to our Econ Talks. Gareth and I discussing what we're seeing moving across the economy. And look, last week, bit of a bombshell dropped on Tuesday night with community transmission of COVID-19 announced back in New Zealand. We thought we'd beaten it. It turns out we hadn't. And I think last week was a bit of a reality check, really, for where New Zealand is heading, both from a health standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint. I mean, Gareth, what does this mean in terms of economic activity? We've gone back to level 3 in Auckland, level 2 across the rest of the country. It's not a particularly rosy picture anymore, is it, for the September quarter?
No, September quarter now not going to be entirely business as usual, as we might have hoped. But I mean, our estimates for a 2-week lockdown in Auckland at level 3, that is likely to knock around about 1 percentage point off nationwide GDP for the quarter. So it's not insignificant, but it's certainly nowhere near the scale of what we saw, of course, with the whole country in level 3 and level 4 the previous quarter. You'd probably allow a little bit on top of that for everyone else operating at level 2, but to be honest, most of the restrictions at level 2 are related to the border, which we've already incorporated into our modelling anyway. There's not a great deal on top of that.
Totally. And of course, in Auckland, slightly different than what we are seeing across the rest of the country. About 28% by our estimates of Auckland's workers not able to go about their normal employment lives. So that's, of course, a big reduction in terms of activity. But also noting that Auckland's 38% of New Zealand's economic story. So again, it has quite an economic gravitational pull, if you will. And that's going to, I suspect, change those calculations as we move forward as well. The other challenge is that although New Zealand's at level 2, it seems like a lot of places are operating more at level 2.5. And again, I think that's a different change that we've seen as we move up the alert levels rather than down, and it has some real big ramifications when it comes to confidence, I'd suspect.
Yeah, and you can imagine how that flows through into the likes of many retailers or hospitality businesses as well, on top of the sort of restrictions that they've already had to put in place around physical distancing and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's definitely, I guess, room around those growth or GDP estimates just to be a little bit cautious about how big the impact of this might be. And it could be a little more sizable than your sort of initial modelling might suggest. I think for me, though, probably the biggest issue is this is probably the one allowance that I think business or the public are going to give the government in terms of getting things wrong and letting it slip through the border. We've seen quite a bit of criticism over the last few days about the testing regime at the border and how it hadn't ramped up in terms of what we were being told, and certainly in terms of the political expectations as well. You talk to people around the place, and obviously it's already impacting on confidence, but I guess the key message is we don't want to be going down this path again. We need to have, I guess, more certainty and assuredness that that border control is working, because going in and out of lockdowns is just going to hammer confidence if we have to be back there again in another 2 or 3 months' time.
Absolutely. Look, level 1 is not a particularly great place for the New Zealand economy to be, but it's better to be at level 1 for a consistently long period of time, noting that the rest of the world remains in a real state of uncertainty and flux with COVID, rather than having New Zealand yo-yo up or down the alert levels. That uncertainty it provides to businesses, the disruption it puts into the economy is a far worse fate in many regards. And so I completely agree. We've now got to get this one right. And again, noting that it's only a small cluster so far, but it also does show just how rapidly this can spread, and again addresses those concerns when it comes to recognising that COVID is a health crisis first and foremost, and the economy is sort of part of that response, but not the primary challenge. And I guess for government as well, moving ahead, how we support the New Zealand economy moving forward with these lockdowns or with changes to the economic picture, you do wonder if we need to get a bit more refined than just shelling out a wage subsidy every time we find a new case, because that will become rapidly unsustainable.
Yeah, I mean, that money is obviously already in some respects running out, and from a business point of view, yes, it covers some of your costs, but not all of the costs, or certainly the lost profit and opportunities that you suffer when we move into lockdown. So yeah, definitely needing a change of strategy, but ultimately, the more stringent or more certain border controls so that we can actually operate from both a consumer and a business perspective with a greater degree of certainty around our planning.
look, some massive challenges coming through it, and some tough times for retailers and different businesses, both in Auckland and across the country. We'll keep sort of keeping an eye on it and evaluating how we see the economy changing and being challenged by these continued curveballs that we are seeing. And we'll catch you next time on our Econ Talks chat.